Welcome to the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host Jivraj, and today I have with me a very exciting guest, the marketing maverick, the growth OG of the Indian ecosystem. Join me in welcoming Mr. Damandeep Soni, the Vice President of Growth at boAt, and with multiple other experiences at multiple startups and MNCs across the spectrum. Thank you so much, Daman, for joining me. Such a pleasure for me to be able to host you.
Good morning, Jivraj. Pleasure to be here, man. It's great what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Daman. And I'm so excited for this episode, especially because, there are these pointed expert things that we as young students aren't really aware about. And I'm sure we're going to demystify a lot of it in today's episode, right? So I want to jump right in and talk about growth. And let's start with the golden circle, because I feel that's a great way to understand the realms of growth, what growth entails. So why is growth required? What is growth? How is growth enabled, and by whom is a great place to start, in my opinion. So would love your opinion there.
So let's start with why is growth required? Anything that's not growing is dying.
Fair.
That's the principle, right? It's for humans, it's for trees, it's even for companies, right? If your revenues, if your users are all stagnating, means someone's eating into your growth. So growth is the essential part of any living organism and any thriving company, right? And if I talk about growth, traditionally, growth was a problem which used to be headed by the salesperson or by the marketing person or the M&A person, if you're looking at inorganic growth. But today, growth as a field has evolved quite a lot. There are cross-functional teams in different companies which have seen hyper growth, which are teams across tech, product, marketing, sales, who come together to create this whole growth function, which helps company really grow swiftly. And when I mean swiftly, I don't mean throw money at the problem kind of a growth, but paid marketing is just one small aspect of growth that we've seen, but that takes up most of the conversations around, because you see a lot of hoarding, you see a lot of ads, and you think the company is growing, but that may not be the case. There are ample companies who haven't shown an ad on mainstream media and are growing like crazy. So it's an interesting space to be in. The best part of the space is you're learning every day. Every day, every month, practically, there's a new channel for growth. There's a new way to grow. The growth tactics and the strategies that we followed 5 years are not even relevant today. Right. So it's an awesome place to be in.
For sure, looks very exciting, and throughout my research I was so fascinated by what you're doing. So as a follow-up to that, let's move to, let's say, growth functions, right? So acquisition, activation, those things which seem very fancy from the outside, but I'm sure involve a lot of technicalities that a general consumer may not be aware of, or somebody who's interested in this space may not be aware of. So would love your insights to what those functions entail. What are the enabling channels by which growth can be enabled? So let's take a deep dive to that, I guess.
Yeah. So typically we have the growth funnel, right? In a traditional view, folks come in on the top of the funnel and then they end up as buyers at the bottom of the funnel. So it starts with acquisition, wherein we have to go out and get a new user. The user enters a platform. He then enters activation, which is basically he starts to explore the platform. He's signed up and everything. And then there's retention, wherein we get the user to come back again and again. And then there's referral, wherein if the user has enjoyed the platform, you have to encourage him to get more of his friends onto the platform. And then there's revenue. So this is a typical growth funnel: acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue. But this is a very traditional way of looking at things, and it forms a very good first principles framework. But what we increasingly look at today is a growth loop. Okay. Which is not linear, so to say, wherein we say the user takes an action, and there's an output because of that action, which in turn brings a new user. For example, let's take Google for an example, wherein a user searches something on Google. Google feeds that search result into its algorithm, and it figures out how to present a better search to the next user, right? So this means that every user that's coming onto the platform needs to fit into one of the growth loops, the referral growth loop or the acquisition growth loop, which essentially entails the getting the user into the funnel. But if you start thinking in loops, that's what helps you build sustainable growth engines today.
Fair enough, fair enough. So setting the right processes and the right loops, that's a great cue out there, and good to understand in any sort of mechanism. Furthermore, so we've understood the why and we've understood the functions part of it. Let's move on to channels, right? And as you mentioned that there's a new channel almost every new month, and there's so many options, right? So from a very basic fundamental standpoint, what are some of the channels that growth marketers actually look at? What can folks who are just getting started out actually start experimenting with, and what's the kind of sauce there that you would suggest?
So I get this question pretty often, what's the best channel for my company?
Right.
And my answer is, let's discover. Okay. What helped Paytm get its millions of users may not help the next UPI app to get its next million
For
users.
sure.
So in growth, it's good to have frameworks built in, right? I follow I created a framework a long time ago called the 4 pillars of growth.
Okay.
So there are 4 essential channels. Okay. Right. One is organic. Which is a function of your brand, how popular your brand is, how big your brand is, how good your search engine optimization is, how good your app store optimization is. So basically, we measure this channel with the number of organic users coming in, and with every channel, there has to be something that to be measured, right? Then there is a paid channel, which is something which everyone sees, which is basically TV ads, radio ads, newspaper ads, performance marketing, wherein we do a lot of contextual driven ads, moment based marketing, right? Retargeting, demographic driven marketing on digital. So these are Facebook, Google ads. So all of them come into the paid marketing. And here we measure a lot of the upper funnel metrics, the acquisition and the activation. How many people that came in from the Google channel actually ended up signing up for the product, right? Then the third one, if you go deeper, is the product pillar. So product pillars, so we have this product marketing, right? Wherein we talk about growth hacks within the product, wherein the user is coming in, the thank you page also says, here's a referral code, get the next user, rather than just saying, thank you for buying a product, you're awesome. Then we have a lot of product-driven growth hacks that we do. For example, at Mobikwik, we took the contacts permissions from the phone, and every time you open up a phone and you see the contact details, you'll see a Mobikwik icon below your name so that you can directly transfer or recharge the phone. So this hack alone would get us around 20,000 users a day, right? And then obviously over time, hacks like this, they become stale because everyone starts doing it, right? If you have 15 icons, then obviously it's not going to be as effective as before. And then products got to do a lot of customer experience, right? How do I shorten my onboarding process? How do I make it easier for the user to get to the money button, so on and so forth? So product is a very essential pillar of growth. And the fourth is, which is ignored by a lot of marketers and product managers, is partnerships, which is basically deep integration for distribution and cross leveraging of each other's audiences. It's not about I'll show my logo on my brand and you show my logo on your brand. It doesn't work like that. It's got to be far deeper. Like again, I'll take Mobikwik as an example. So we did a very deep partnership with Ola at that point in time, right? Ola said we didn't want Mobikwik because we have Ola Pay. We said, why don't we ensure that Ola gets booked from within the Mobikwik app, right? And there was a very significant value proposition why the user would do that as opposed to an Ola app. That's a story for another day. But this kind of a thing would get us around 20 to 30,000 transactions on a daily basis just by doing a tech partnership. So partnerships is something which I think is also an essential pillar. Once you have these 4 pillars in place, then you start getting into channels. And the way to go about channels is initially, so I get this question quite a lot from new startups. Which channel should I start? The framework to follow is start with 2 channels that you feel are significantly confident about and see what works. Moment you have one channel working for you, get another 2 channels in, right? Rather than spreading your bets across all channels. And which I've seen is a mistake a lot of guys do, because a lot of these channels, they require a certain amount of money or capital for it to perform, right? Even in Facebook, when you start an ad, campaign, it takes 7 days for it to get out of the learning phase, right? So you have to give this challenge time. If you start seeing the CAC on day one, you're like, oh no, this is like 5 times what I expected, and you just figure off it doesn't work. And similarly for partnerships, for example, it moves the needle very nicely, but it takes a lot of time, right? When you to convince a new company to saying that that you want to partner. So yeah, these are the 4 pillars of growth, the channels of growth that I would mentally work with.
Wow. I love that thought, and goes back to the framework model and how structured your thoughts are. But you've not used this word yet, experimentation, right? And I've heard you talk about it before, and it's amazing how from the outside it can seem like growth might be a linear process where you do the things that are required and get the results out there. But the way you've spoken about experimentation in the past and how growth teams should function and how you've conducted appraisals has been really fascinating. So I want to move and jump to how the growth culture can be enabled within teams across the board and specifically for growth teams as well. And what do you think optimizing for makes the most sense? I think that'd be a good segment to enter and understand better about growth teams and what the persona should be about them.
Yeah. So I have this paradigm that I share. So a coder knows what he needs to code, what the output needs to be. Right. A person in finance needs to know that at the end of the day, the book should balance. Right. And there's a P&L. A marketer or a growth person doesn't know how he's going to grow. If you ask me today and you make me sit, okay, and you give me a company, I'll say, I don't know, I'll have to figure it out. Now, the word figure it out is essentially underlines, if you open the lid, there are 2 things into it. One is, if I have to figure it out, I have to experiment. And if I have to experiment, I have to be very detached and democratic in my process in this whole experimentation, which means I have to rely extensively on data. I should not get married to a particular channel, to a particular product hack that I've developed. So the way we run growth and the way you've seen the growth being projected on a PR, which is a nice straight line month on month. It's never like that. There's a lot of ups and downs, right? So for example, here at boAt, we know we want to grow X percentage on a month on month basis, right? We've lined up our experiments for the next 3 months. We run typically 8 to 10 experiments a week. Now, herein lies the problem, right? The fact that you're using the word experiment means you're going to fail. Right. Okay. If you don't use an experiment, if you say I don't want to use an experiment, you know what you have to do, right? You're given someone an SOP and he executes that. So if you have to do experiments, you need to have a team which is very data literate, who can analyze and see what the numbers are telling it, not what it wants the numbers to say to defend the thing. The second is you need to structure the team in such a way. Now, you spoke about appraisals. The team has to be structured in such a way that the appraisal is not dependent on the outcome of the experiment, but rather the process of the experiment. Okay. So basically, to put it in very layman term, a team member who runs a lot of experiments gets a good appraisal, right? Okay. And it's not that my team members just come and say, okay, now here I've got 10 experiments. Again, we made it very democratic in this whole process. The whole team sits down and we then agree upon whether this experiment warrants a budget or and time. And we create a playbook which says that, we tried this experiment 3 months ago. It didn't work. Do you have some new way of running this, or you have some new data point to run? And that's when you get approval. So also there's a lot of creative collisions that we create within the growth team. For example, the product person and the social media person may come up with an idea, right, to hack their way through a social media platform using a product hook, and they'll come together with an experiment. So you have to create all these collisions for growth experiments to be created. And if you create the process of building experiments, growth will come. You have no option but to grow, right? So that's the way I typically structure my growth teams. I've seen a lot of teams where growth has been an integral part of the company. It's been a spirit of experiments. It's and experiments are also what experiment will work is something that you have to double down on. Then you don't start second guessing the result. right? So, for example, we recently tried a new partnership. We ran that whole experiment twice just to be sure, and then we started investing in the experiment. We didn't expect invest 5x or 10x. We invested 1000x. Okay, which in turn broke our platform, which is a good problem to have, right? But now we know that for the next 2 months, this experiment is going to take us to the next phase of growth. So yeah, that's how we run experiments in a growth team at the company.
Fair enough. I think that's a great pointer again, because, I've heard about experiments and iterative approaches, let's say in product teams and things like that. This is, I think, a very candid and fresh perspective to how growth is looked at in organizations as well. So kudos to that. Moving on from there to, let's say, metrics, right? And I love your approach to, again, North Star metrics, the one metric that matters and all of that as well. But I'd request you to perhaps dumb it down a bit further as well. People talk about maintaining LTV to CAC ratios, things like that, KPIs, OKRs, whatnot, right? So if you had to perhaps break it down from the very fundamental level in terms of what metrics are you eventually chasing with growth teams and what are the metrics that you should look at eventually, would be a great pointer to dive deeper into.
Okay, so I'll quickly move from North Star into what the asli mal is, as you all know, right? So see, North Star metric is a metric which captures the core value that the product delivers to the customer. So let me put this in a very clear term. The first time when I ask a lot of guys, what do you think is the North Star metric? I mean, 80% of the time I get the answer is revenue. No, revenue is what you get from the customer. North Star metric is what you give to the customer, right? For example, in Airbnb, the North Star metric is number of nights booked, right? Yeah. So the whole company is configured to delivering the number of nights booked. Right. Okay. So for example, at Milkbasket, we wanted to create a North Star metric as number of groceries delivered to the user on time. Okay. Which meant is the user can put a lot of groceries in one basket, have order almost every day with less number of groceries, and he will do that if it reaches his home before 7 o'clock in the morning. Right? So what this now does is, now if you have this singular goal, and this is a very important goal for a company, because if you have the singular goal, then you start breaking it into smaller metrics and KPIs. For example, the logistics team will say, you know what, I have to configure my processes so that it gets delivered on time, which means I need to get stuff into my warehouses one night before. Right. So which means the retention team needs to figure out patterns which say that, okay, this guy orders eggs every 6 days. So I have to give him a reminder for egg on the 6th day so that he doesn't forget to put that, because he's a busy person. Okay. Right. Or I know that this person goes on a holiday every March because his basket is empty for the whole March. So I need to proactively tell him, don't order in March, because then I earn trust from him. I know when he gets back, he's going to order more groceries from me. So a lot of stuff which gets broken into smaller metrics. And the way we do this is we create pods, right? Okay. A pod may be a group of people, a growth pod is a group of cross-functional people. So let's talk about delivering on time. Okay, which means the tech and the product team need to work very closely with the logistics team so that we can do predictive analysis of, let's say, how much cabbage we need for the next day, so that we can automatically place that order and create a dummy invoice, so that all the person has to do is pick a vendor and shoot it off to him and say that this is what I want, right? The product team can also create a bidding system where it says, okay, I need 500 kgs of cabbage, and he shoots it out to all his vendors, and they come back with pricing, and the person can just fill up that thing and get on with the invoice. So, got it. And likewise, because when you say delivering on time, we think about bikes, trucks, manpower, right? But there's a lot of stuff that goes on the product side also. So while that is definitely happening, right, you have to optimize. So if you want to deliver on time, you need more manpower, right? Or you need better systems and processes to deliver with the same manpower, right? So then it becomes a traveling salesman problem. How should I go to different buildings to deliver? So so a growth pod comes together to solve this whole problem. The team has to figure out how to reduce time by X minutes, X hours. And so that's when the fun starts, right? They in turn come up with 5 to 10 experiments, saying that, you know what, we'll create this invoicing process. And then they're like, no, yaar, wo to mandi mein hai. In the mandi, they don't, they want a person over there. Fine, let's recruit someone who's posted in the mandi. Right? So stuff like this happens. And the point is, there's a structure to this, right? We know all these engines are simultaneously coming up, and they're all firing at different ways. At boAt, every morning when we discuss experiments, I ask my team, will the boAt go faster?
Right.
So this is by virtue of the Olympic team, wherein they said we'll do anything and everything it takes to make the boAt go faster. We'll lose weight, we'll wear thinner shoes, we'll have longer rows. So any experiment that comes in, the team asks, will the boAt go faster? And if it goes faster, yes, we go in for that experiment.
Wow, that's amazing and spectacular to hear the way you've defined the North Star metric for us, and the way you've looked at it and breaking it down into smaller components is amazing to fathom. So moving from there, and let's go to a couple of short bites that I'd like to ask you. So there's so many myths about the system, right? So you called it, right, in terms of marketing and cross-functional teams and the experimentation approach. All of those could be myths as well, but what are some of the myths that you think are commonly misunderstood at the consumer level or at the aspirational level about growth teams that you would kind of want to bust for us?
Okay, so one common thing that I've heard is growth needs a lot of capital. No, it does not. Right? Okay. It needs a lot of grit. Okay. It needs capital, but it doesn't require that much capital people estimate it to be. All your users are not going to come from paid growth, right? The organic engine and the partnership engines, they all start kicking in. The second thing is, okay, now we've got this guy, now we'll be able to grow. No. growth is a cross-functional team effort. There is no growth superhero, right? Okay. The superhero is the growth process. Okay. The third is, we rely on data for growth. No, you don't. You make the data say what you wanted to say, right? If you, a lot of the time, we look at data, we have to really dumb down data, right? So that everyone understands. But that dumbing down data kind of hides a lot of things. Okay, right. Data is dirty. Data and the biggest flaw in the biggest word flawed word in data is average, right? Averages hide a lot of things. It hides a lot of trusts and spikes, which should get you worried. So what I love is histograms. For example, in terms of, let's talk about delivery, I see how many orders were delivered within 1 hour, within 2 hours, within 3 hours, within 5 hours, within 40 hours, rather than seeing what is the average delivery time. No, that doesn't matter, because I have to then work on the Pareto principle. I have to Pareto attack it, right? So yeah, these are some of the big myths, thinking that you are getting data, thinking you need capital, thinking you need a growth superstar. No, you need a lot more to get the engine going.
Wow. That's again, I think very, very fascinating to hear. Although I don't agree to the first part, I'm sure you are the growth superhero any organization needs. So cheers there. But apart from that, what are 3 don'ts? I think so. To-dos are too many to ask because those will become prescriptive. But according to you, what are some of the do-nots for sure in a growth marketer per se that, you think are things to avoid for sure? These things are, not required.
Okay. So, let me put it this way. If your mind is full of fear, and this is like a Star Wars thing, but jokes aside, if your mind is full of fear, you will not grow. Because, and for that to happen, the environment needs to be created in such a way that the growth team is fearless in terms of driving experiments. Because if 7 out of 10 times they're going to fail, and the environment says that, oh shit, you know what, this guy's not doing well, he's going to second guess his experiments. So we need to we do not need to instill fear in the environment in the growth team, right? Quite often I have other stakeholders who come really hard at us saying that we're not growing. We know there's a process to it, right? We know we are true to the process. We will grow, right? There can be certain months where a lot of experiments have failed. So be it, because the market condition has changed.
Right.
So we need to do that. We need to know that. Second is we look for silver bullets in growth,
Okay.
right? Uh, the silver bullet. First of all, there are silver bullets. There are very few silver bullets, and the silver bullets keep changing.
Right.
For example, when I started my journey with Line, they wanted 1 million users in the first month. I got them 3 million users using Google Ads, and not even spending 1/10 of what I would spend today. So today, if you give me the same cost and say use Google Ads to get that many users, I can't.
Right.
Because today there are far more number of advertisers doing that, right? So you need to figure out how to go about that, right? You've seen how Clubhouse has gone about that. They've gone through the influencer marketing route. They've created scarcity. So there are very different ways to do. So their silver bullet is getting a lot of top honchos and key influencers onto the platform by virtue of the investor. So that's something which everyone needs to. Now you can't do a Clubhouse again, right? I mean, you can't grow with the same principle that Clubhouse is doing right now. You can't get Elon Musk onto your platform because they've done that. They want to come again to your platform, right?
Right.
So these are some of the things that we really need to think. The third is, do not take growth to be a straight line. The growth curve is never a straight line. It's a series of bumps, and which means a series of experiments running. But when those experiments come together, right, that's when you jam, and that's when you really get into the fifth gear. So, and once you get into the fifth gear, the growth is going to plateau, and then you need to again do that whole growth curve all over again.
Fair enough. So no fear and not looking at growth as a straight line, and being very accustomed to looking at growth in the right manner and processes. So those are great takeaways.
And not living by silver bullets.
Not living by silver bullets. Perfect. Moving further, I know for a fact that you like to think in a lot of mental models, which have been really helpful, some of which you've published in your blogs as well and in your other talks. So do you have any, if not prescribing principles, but things that really help you structure your thoughts in the right manner possible and then present it in the best, or in terms of leading teams or anything whatsoever? Would love to know that.
So I read a lot of stuff which has nothing to do with growth. Right,
Okay.
So the reason being, we need to look. So we need to think outside the box practically every day, right? Otherwise, we're not growing. We are growing at the median growth level. So I take a lot of inspiration from, like for example, "Will the boat go faster?" came something from reading a sports book, right? Trying to lose as much weight so that we can grow faster, so we can run faster. So, which means getting rid of legacy systems, getting more agile systems into play.
Right.
So for me, reading is very very varied. I read a lot of history because what the paradigms that they offer at that point in time, they didn't have many resources and technology at play, right? The earlier generations, and how did they go about growing and assembling huge armies and conquering different countries? So they offer very, very good paradigms for me to work with. For example, on the partnerships front, I believe a coalition of common souls can really drive growth for everyone together. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, right? For example, I just gave you the partnership with Ola that we did. That it's not, so even they had a wallet, right? It's not the expense of one versus the other. Right. So you can all collectively grow. So yeah, I mean, it's these are things that help me create my mental models for me.
Fair enough. I mean, that makes me think, Kunal Shah talks about this, and reading about psychology, about humanity, and understanding the people better in the real realms of it, so that he can, make for them. So I think this is a great approach, to read nothing in terms of, if not nothing, to read absolutely different things than growth is a great pointer. This has been super fun, Daman, and we've covered so many things. For the last question, I'll keep it relatively stereotypical and simple, but I'd love to know that, throughout about your experiences in different organizations, in a variety of places. You've done a lot of growth, a lot of marketing, and a lot of things. What are some of the qualitative aspects that you've picked up during this journey, and what are some of the things that would count as learnings or satisfying factors personally for you, as opposed to, let's say, technical aspects? Would love to know that, and I think that'd be a very fitting end to this amazing episode.
So my biggest source of happiness in this whole journey is a lot of my team members that I work with are today growth heads of companies.
Wow.
And these are folks that started working with me with 1 or 2 years experience, even 0 years of experience, and had a huge learnability quotient. They've worked with frameworks, they've discovered new things, and now when their philosophy of working is so rich that they give it back now, in the sense we have this whole community wherein we learn from each other's strengths. Mm-hmm. So I get to learn a lot more from them, and I don't need to have to go down a rabbit hole to discover something. Everything is now a phone call away. But to see a lot of these guys blossom into being marketing heads and growth heads in companies is something that's given me immense happiness.
Wow, that's a beautiful thought, Daman, to be deriving satisfaction from the fact that the people that you worked with earlier have gone on to define their own success is beautiful. This has been super, super amazing. I think we've spoken from the fundamentals of growth, to the do nots, to the myths, to frameworks, to channels, to everything under the sun, at least on the fundamental basis of growth. Thank you so, so much for your time. This has been super awesome and fun. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thanks, Jivraj. It was wonderful being here, and I had a really nice chat today. Thanks a lot, man.